is, give me a second. I'm going to introduce Joe in a minute. Joe is he's a director of Nordens, and he's also head of our strategic consultancy department, doing a lot more in-depth work with businesses. And what he's going to do is he's going to discuss what you should and could be doing right now yourself if you're not already, which will include cash flow forecasts and how to plan ahead through this period and so on. Then we'll hear from Ross Kendrick, if he's actually been able to get in. I've just had a message from him saying the password's incorrect. But what can you do? If he's not here, then fine. Sorry, I'm just getting told to kick a few people out because there's people spamming the room. Anyway, I'll do that in a second. So then Joe will come back and he will discuss what's happening with the banks and the government, and how to receive what they're actually asking for, how to receive what businesses are asking for, and what the banks are actually going to require to get funding, as well as the rent, the business rates relief. Joe will discuss all the financing options that you will have, grants and so on. What I'll then do is introduce Sharon, who's the head of our HR department. And Sharon is going to explain furlough. What furlough is? It's one of the biggest questions and probably the word of the moment. Everybody's discussing furlough. So Sharon will explain exactly what it is, and how to go about it, and what you need to do from an HR point of view to make it happen. So if I introduce Joe right now, I've got to find him on the list to unmute. I'll let Joe take it from here while I kick out some people that are causing some problems. Hang on a second.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. Hi, everyone. As Mitch mentioned, my name is Joe. I head up the strategic consultancy department here at Norden. And what I'm going to do firstly is just kind of go through a few of the areas where I think you can help yourself initially, before I move on to talking about the government initiatives and other areas where you can get support. So, as Mitch mentioned, it's really, really important that you stay positive. It is an emotional time for everyone, but things will change, things will get better, and we will come out of this. Staying positive, though, is only part of it. You need to be acting diligently. So it's vital, like Mitch mentioned, you don't bury your head in the sand. The worst thing that you can do at this point is just to default to do nothing. And it is tough and it is easy to do, because when you're in this situation feeling overwhelmed with everything, it is tough. But making the best business decisions you possibly can in this climate, supported by your advisors and the rest of your support network, is the best use of your time right now. Cash is king, more than ever in the current climate. And we'd like to get across a few things to consider to help understand and preserve your cash position. So to start with, we can't emphasize this enough. Every single business should be working with a weekly cash flow forecast at this point. Some research released today indicate that 1 in 5 small businesses are going to run out of cash in this period. So it's vital that you know if and when that pinch will be for you, sooner rather than later, to avoid being within that 20%. It is vital. We cannot stress it enough. Your cash flow forecast, it's your go-to tool to understand where you are and where you're heading. A lot of businesses are doing this already, which is fantastic. You just need to be able to spot those pinch points, especially the weeks where you're sailing close to the wind. And having this with you will ensure that the decisions you make in the coming months will be as informed and as correct as possible. Given the uncertain climate, it can't be exact, but you're giving yourself the best fighting chance. So for those of you that need support and assistance here, we've created a template for you, and it will be included in the pack that everyone listening will get sent at the end of this. We can help assist you build a bespoke cash flow forecast for your business from scratch, or we can do a middle ground where we critique what you've produced yourself and offer a scenario and some what-if analysis around the forecast that you've done to give you sort of a best, a worst, and in-between sort of scenario. What else is really, really important is I'll go on to a few other things, but firstly, the first thing to note is the cash flow forecast is absolutely essential. It's one of your fighting resources to help you through this period. So the next thing to move on to, the next thing to really strongly consider right now at this moment in time is getting your books and records up to date. So in light of the need for funding, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail afterwards, it will give you the better control in your business. It's so essential, because if you're behind with your books and records, you're going to limit your exposure and your chances to generate funding. So it's so important that you're using this time to make sure your books and records are up to date. Thankfully, we're here to help. We're open for business. We're open to help you get these accounts and your books all up to date. So speak to your client managers, make sure you're on track with getting all your records up to date. It's vitally important, and it will help you fast forward the process to help you get funding as you need it. Another thing to mention from our point of view is your team. It's vital that you're communicating effectively with them, as your team members are going to be looking to you as the owners for guidance. So Sharon will be on shortly to discuss in a bit more detail around furlough and all the developments there. But in the meantime, it's vitally important that you have a regular communication plan set up where you're communicating clearly on the facts, ideally not communicating too much about speculation. And what we'd say is short and often communication is usually better than long and infrequent communication. Aim to come across as upbeat as positive and as positive as possible to keep them motivated and aligned with you. Because as I've mentioned, as you all know, as we all know, it's a difficult time for everyone at the moment. Other things that you can be doing to help yourself include being in regular dialogue with your customers. We mentioned about a cash flow forecast earlier, and is due in from customers is going to form a massive part of that. You need to be chatting with them and understanding where they are at with things so you can predict accurately when the money is going to be coming in. So a clear credit control procedure is vitally important. You need to understand whether you're likely to experience significant delays in your receivables here, so your forecast can be as accurate as possible. If you only work with a couple of select customers, look at the possibility of advanced billing or interim billing for any work that you've done before everyone went into lockdown, because reality is you have a right to be able to bill that. Another thing to consider is looking at ways your business can pivot in the short term. If you are now based from home where you cannot do any physical work, look at other things that you can potentially offer your client base or related customers. Can you do anything remotely, packaging up sort of an online or virtual way of delivering your services? I accept it will not be possible for all businesses, but we are in an age now where a lot of things can be done remotely and you can still deliver value that way. So one thing for sure is once this is all over, everyone's going to be raring to go. So perhaps you can discuss with your customers with an element of their own post-coronavirus planning, and you can add value there. Another thing, consider tax reliefs, such as research and development. Now, this is one of the most misunderstood and underutilized tax reliefs out there, in our opinion. And it also has a potential cash repayment. And if people are not too sure about what that is or whether they'll be able to qualify for it, just let us know and we can give you more background and more details around that after the call. The other things to consider are selecting business suppliers and speaking to your suppliers and landlords. It's important that you're looking at every angle to reduce your payments going out, or at least defer them or agree some sort of discount. It's really, really important. Be open and honest with them. A lot of them will be going through the same thing as you and will be able to understand where you're coming from. And there should be a likelihood that you'll be able to reach a compromise there. You're going to have to make some tough decisions on certain payments as you're building your cash flow, because if you are running out of cash and you are struggling to trade, you're going to have to make some decisions where you're not going to be able to pay the suppliers in an ideal time frame. So again, if you're able to pay all of them something, that will often yield a better result than just selecting one or two to pay the full amount and knock all the rest for the time being. Speaking to your current bank and your current lenders around any loans that you've got is also really important, not just for the business, but for yourselves personally. A lot of the banks and lenders are agreeing 3-month payment windows, payment holidays, I should say, really, really easily now, because they all understand of people's situation. So if you haven't done that already, do that. Hedging foreign exchange. If you're a business that deals heavily in foreign exchange or foreign currencies, Ross will be coming on shortly to talk a bit more about that, hopefully. But again, it's something to look at to limit your exposure there. And also checking what insurance claims you're eligible for. A lot of insurance policies, unfortunately, will exclude pandemics, but the policies do differ significantly. So what we recommend is to check your terms and conditions and just speak to your insurance provider to see if you are eligible for any claims there. And another quite key thing is making sure you and your team are giving yourselves the best chance to be set up from home. Make the most of apps such as Zoom, like we're on now, and because they offer free use for a period of time, which allow you to carry on having meetings and discussions, and you can see each other face to face. So there are lots of things to consider there. But one of the other things, like Mitch alluded to when he opened, was planning ahead. Most businesses will have experienced a drop in output and will continue to do so. And this break, so to speak, gives everyone the chance and the time that you've all probably been desperate for to actually work on your business, to ensure that you're all well placed and fighting fit to be ready to spring out the other side. So our strategic team here at Nordens, we're perfectly placed to have these conversations around during coronavirus and post-coronavirus exit. So the areas that we'd look to discuss with you are critically evaluating your business model and your related product offerings. Is your business model viable in the future climate? Is it going to be stretched as far as it can? What other things can you do to make your business as solid and as well-rounded as possible? Assessing your cost base, creating your post-coronavirus marketing drive. These are all things you can be doing as part of your kind of lockdown process while you're not actually working like you would want to be. And probably the most important thing we recommend is to be having a look at those personal goals around your business, really, really cementing why you're doing what you're doing. This is a time that everyone's probably appreciated that health and family come before everything else. So it's really important that you're spending time for when this is finished to actually look and see, okay, this is why I'm doing this. This is the legacy I want to leave. This is the reason I'm doing this and getting up every day. Because once you've got that clear vision, that clear end goal in mind, you can actually work from where you are a lot easier than if you're not really clear on that. So that's one thing we really recommend you look to cement down while you're in this period of thinking and working on your business. So we can assist you with funding options and clarity of the other areas of government support, which I'll come on to shortly. Use this to provide advice and recommendations on what we feel is the best solution for your unique situation, because every business is different. Every business will have different intricacies to it, but that is hopefully a sort of general overview on simple things you can do now to help support yourself. You're not alone in this. Client feedback this far from the clients we've been working with, just speaking to someone dramatically helps. And like I said at the start, don't bury your head in the sand. A problem shared is a problem halved, and we're here to turn your problem into a solution and a way forward. And just a final bit on the cash flow, like I mentioned before, it's just so important. We've done quite a lot of cash flow forecasts over the last couple of weeks with our clients, and the resounding feedback has been, wow, that gives us more control now. We feel a lot more comfortable. I feel like a weight's been lifted off my shoulders just knowing where we are with it all. So it's just so important. It relieves so much stress and tension and uncertainty. And I just think that has to be your first place to start. So like I said, if you need assistance, you want to have a chat through where you are with your own cash forecasting, just let us know after the call and we can speak to you separately. But for now, it's back to you, Mitch.
I appreciate it, Joe. And honestly, guys, I've literally just been spending the last 10 minutes while you've been talking, trying to kick as many people out of the room as possible. There's loads of people on here that are putting the images on. If you want to stop this, my suggestion would be is go to the top and click gallery view instead of speaker view. And I think you'll probably get around it and just keep it on the front page, and they should be gone. So I do apologize. I do apologise about that. Well, unfortunately, Ross isn't being able to connect for some reason. There's a Joe. I think it was really good. I appreciate that. Appreciate what you've just said. How would people start going about putting a cash flow forecast in place then? Because I think for me, that's the most. I know you just kind of went into a bit more detail, but that's the most important thing for me right now. Where would you tell people to start? How would you tell people to start? Joe, you muted yourself, didn't you? There you go.
I'm on mute now. Yeah, so sort of what following on. I mean, we've got a template, and if you're used to doing this already, you should have a bit more of a guidance and a bit more of an understanding. But for those of you that don't, we've got a template, and it really is a case of, right, first of the month today. So it's a great opportunity to use basically your bank statements from the previous month, look at all your outgoings, slot them all in, separate line if it will help, if you want it to be quite detailed, and have it line by line. A lot of clients find that easier because they can literally just tick it off one by one as it's going. Look through those bank statements, see the expenditure that you're likely to incur based on March. Obviously, some of the stuff that you might have been doing would be agreeing payment holidays and reduced payments for certain expenses. So that's something that you can factor in. But generally, list out all your income, list out all your costs, all on one line, and then you can jig around with it and move it across to allow you to start plotting out a way out of this situation. So listed all that income, listing all the money that you're due in, when you're likely to get it in, and then moving down onto all your expenditure. And then what you'll be able to do using our template is plot the costs and plot the respective income into different weeks. And then what you'll have at the end will be the running balance. So therefore, you'll be able to see, based on this scenario, can I trade out of it? Based on this scenario, what do I need to cut back on? What do I need to stop to enable me to have a position where I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak? So that would be the first thing. Get a complete and comprehensive list of all your costs, get a complete list of all the income you're expected in and any future income that you feel is kind of guaranteed and it's likely to happen. Plot that all out, see what it initially looks like, and then tailor it and move things around to enable to give you a bit more of a kind of a clearer graph to show where you're going to be heading.
So what would you say to basically fill in the template weekly, monthly, annually? What would you say is the?
I think weekly has to be the ideal scenario at the moment. I mean, some clients are quite comfortable and capable of doing it on a monthly, and that's fine, providing they feel comfortable with it. But I would even encourage those people to be, because of the situation we're in at the moment, I would recommend weekly. I don't think annually will be of much use to businesses at this time. I think weekly is essential in my mind.
Okay. Okay, fine. And if anyone needs any support with that, I guess just get in touch with us. I will. By the way, any questions as we go, email them to mitch@nordens.co.uk. So yeah, any questions, and we'll do a Q&A at the end and answer any questions that anyone may have. So look, whilst as Ross isn't in here, he's not been able to get in. Do you want to go on and just kind of discuss an update from the banks, Joe, and what the governments are, what the government are offering, what the banks are offering, what they're requiring, because it's not quite what it seems, is it? I mean, the government have come out and said the banks are going to support and so on, and then the bank have sent literally. Well, you can explain. So, do you want to give an update for anyone who needs finance on here, Joe? Do you want to give an update?
Yeah, so before I go on to the actual bank funding, I'll just give a kind of an overview on the kind of the key initiatives that the government have released to help businesses and business owners so far. So in terms of the current taxation landscape, initially the government's first guidance indicated more flexibility with time to pay, which is great, but it doesn't really mean a lot. They've made it quite clear they're here to work and support businesses. They know the situation. They're saying that they're going to be more lenient with payments, etc. Following on from that, they went a step further. They've committed to defer VAT liabilities and so basically any VAT liability that's due from the 20th of March up until the end of June will now not be payable until March 2021, which is good. It's a significant chunk for a lot of businesses that can kind of put back for a few months and not really thought about until then. Obviously, if you want to pay it on time, you want to pay it earlier than March 2021, that's absolutely fine, because it is only a deferral. You're not actually losing that. It will have to be paid at some time. Nevertheless, in the current climate, it's something positive. They've also said that self-assessment payments on account during July 2020 are actually being delayed until January 2021 now, which again is another deferral, but it stops people worrying about this payment they're going to have to make in July. So following on from that, our immediate advice would be not to make any taxation payments to HMRC until you've spoken to your client manager or someone here at Nordens so they can assess your situation, because once cash has been paid out, it's gone. I'm in the obvious here, but once it's been paid out, there's no real way of getting that back. So I think in the current climate, given the situation that we're in, it's vitally important that we don't make payments unless we're totally sure we've got enough of a buffer there. We can help you gauge the timing of the HMRC payments, and we can help you speak to them and make sure that payment plans and whatever else are agreed. So
Joe, sorry to cut in. So would you say that, and I probably shouldn't be saying this, that not paying a revenue is probably the cheapest and best way of borrowing money right now?
Yeah, I'd say definitely it's something that should be considered as part of your overall cash contingency for sure. Because given that the government are looking to help businesses, I've dealt with clients where they've basically agreed to put things on hold for 3 months with minimal interest kicking in and things like that. So they are open to helping, but they need the communication, like I was saying, about talking to your team, talking to your customers, talking to your suppliers. They also need to be kept in the loop, and they appreciate that, and they're looking to work with people. They get more annoyed with the people that just bury their head in the sand and don't tell them anything and just don't make the payment. So between ourselves and yourselves, we're able to speak to them and negotiate quite favourable terms on that. So yeah, I don't think it should just be a default to knock everything, but I think it should be very, very carefully planned and not paid until we know for sure we've got that buffer. The one other thing I wanted to mention on taxes was it's worth looking at any payments on account that you would have already made in January, because it's a good opportunity to get your next tax return in nice and early. And if it turns out that due to the problems of the coronavirus over the last couple of months, your business is now not going to be as profitable in this tax year, you might be eligible to get some of that cash back that you've already paid. So it would be worth speaking to us there to see what your situation is, so we can look at ways of getting that payment on account back if that is necessary. So moving on.
Do you want to kind of give an insight of what the banks are asking for then at the moment?
Well, I've got. There's a few more other things that the government have announced. So I think let's finish off with those, and then I'll go on to the banks, because it would be good if pen and paper handy that they can write down a few of the key things. So I'll go through the other things. So the government grants for business rates. A little bit more guidance was published today in this. So the rates and the benefits for the government grants will only apply for businesses that would have been eligible at the 11th of March 2020. They've stated that date as the eligible date. So businesses following that date will not be eligible based on the guidance that's been issued today. So there's three key grants that the government have proposed around business rates. The first one is a 10K grant for any business that's eligible for small business rate relief or rural rate relief. The second grant is a grant of up to 25,000 for any business in the retail, hospitality or leisure sector with a rateable value of between 15 and 51,000. And the third incentive is business rates holidays for businesses above the rateable value of 51,000. They've announced business rate holidays for both the 2020 and the 2021 tax years. The grants are not necessarily restricted to one grant per business. So some businesses have potentially more than one grant eligible for more than one grant, because they have more than one property that qualifies. But some councils do have different criteria based on aggregation. So you definitely need to speak to your councils individually to make sure that you're eligible. So bear in mind, for the larger grants, they're only available to the sectors that I've just mentioned, which is leisure, hospitality, retail, and then they also do the business rates holiday for nursery businesses as well. So there's been a bit of a confusion where a lot of clients have thought they're eligible for all the different types of grants, and unfortunately that's not the case. So what the Chancellor has said is, he said that all the local authorities will be contacting the eligible people directly. So theoretically, nobody has to do anything to obtain these grants. If you're eligible, you will be notified and they'll contact you and arrange a payment. However, what we would recommend is that you actually proactively contact your local council just to confirm you're eligible and make sure that you're sort of on the list, so to speak, just to make sure you don't slip through the net. I just wanted to say a bit about the self-employed, because the last Zoom call, there wasn't an announcement. We were expecting an announcement imminently. That actually came shortly after. So in a nutshell, the key points of the announcement for self-employed people were that self-employed people will be able to apply for a grant of up to 80% of their average monthly profits in the last 3 years, up to a ceiling of £2,500 a month. 50% or more of your income has to come from self-employed. Anyone who missed the filing deadline has 4 weeks from the date the government announced it to get their tax return done for 2018-19, and they'll still be eligible for this. So they've opened the door for those late filers. The scheme's only open to people that earn under £50,000 a year. So the government have said that will target 3.8 million of the 5 million people registered. So a fair chunk of them. Of that, you will not qualify though. Unlike the employee scheme, self-employed people can continue to work as they receive support. Now, obviously, it comes down to health issues and everything else when you're determining that, but the government have said self-employed people can continue to work. The money itself will be backdated to March, and it will arrive into people's bank accounts from HMRC, but it won't be there until June. So it's probably worth self-employed people really looking at their situation between now and June, because they're not going to receive the government money until the earliest June. The grants will be taxable and they'll need to go onto your personal tax return. And company owners who are on a low salary and high dividends are not covered. They're not classed as self-employed. They are not self-employed people. And Sharon will probably deal with this in a bit more detail when she starts discussing furlough, because it's probably the most frequently asked question we've had over the last week. I'm a director of a company with a small salary and a high dividend, therefore can I claim the self-employed? The answer is no. It's for self-employed people that complete sole trader income on their personal tax return. Directors and owners of limited companies are not self-employed for this purpose. But for the self-employed people that are listening, the first thing we recommend to do is use our self-employed calculator to check your eligibility. Again, similar to the grants, the government have come out and said that they will contact all eligible people and arrange the payments to be made. So theoretically, you don't have to do anything, but it would be good for your own kind of planning to have checked through the calculator what you're expecting to get back. And then alongside this, all self-employed people are urged to explore the opportunities around the business interruption loan scheme, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Explore options with your own local authorities to receive payment for your council tax. Make sure you're making the most of the self-assessment and the VAT deferral, as I've just mentioned, and explore your options for universal credit. Now, with universal credit, the government have mentioned that advanced claims on applications can be given within a matter of days, so you can get a bit of an upfront payment from them while they're working out your universal credit to help you along immediately. I'm not going to go into huge detail on universal credit because it's quite wide ranging. It varies significantly between people about how much you will get. But the key things that you need to be aware of if you're going to make an application for universal credit is you live in the UK, you're on a low income or out of work, you're 18 or over, you're under state pension age, and between you and your partner, you have £16,000 or less in bank savings between you. If you can't answer those questions, you're unlikely to be able to make a claim for universal credit. So before you start, it'd be worth just checking and making sure you are eligible based on that criteria to start with. So the last thing I just wanted to mention is around property. Now, obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of potential tenants wanting to vacate, etc., etc. So the government introduced emergency legislation to suspend any new evictions from social or private rented accommodation while the coronavirus emergency is in place. No new possession proceedings through applications to the court are able to start during the crisis either. So landlords will also be protected based on a 3-month mortgage payment holiday that's been extended to buy-to-let mortgages. Originally, it was only on residential mortgages, but the government have made sure that that extends to buy-to-lets as well. So they're sort of deferring it from both ends. If you're not getting your income in, you can apply for the payment holiday. It's not great, but at least it's something to keep your kind of cash parity there. So the main and most significant source of help promoted by the government is the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme. The first thing to know about this, it's not a government loan. A lot of people and a lot of clients have thought that this is actually a government loan. The government are going to pay the money on behalf of the business. That's not the case at all. This is a scheme whereby the banks and lenders can get security from the government where a client does not have enough security themselves. We've had a bit more clarity over these loans and have been made aware that the lenders are beginning to issue
Oh, seems like we've lost Joe. I'm sure he'll be back in a
The
second,
fact
but
that it
oh, he's back. There we go. Sorry, mate, we lost you. Carry on.
Where did you hear up to?
Go on, you were about 30 seconds.
Okay, cool. So we've got a bit more clarity over these loans from the government, and lenders are now able to issue approvals, which is good because we were very concerned about the time frame, but at least some of them are now coming through, which is great. So they're actually getting turned around a bit quicker than we initially expected. So the first steps to apply for the loan, it would be the case that you would be applying for a debt/loan facility as normal, and the lenders would assess the affordability of the application. If you're able to provide sufficient level of security, the loan application will carry on as normal. If you're able to get a loan under normal commercial terms, you will therefore not be eligible for the coronavirus loan. If you're unable to provide sufficient security and you meet certain eligibility criteria, lenders will look to the government to secure 80% of it, with the remaining 20% being personally guaranteed. Should you be accepted under the scheme, you're likely to receive favourable terms compared to any lending that was done before the outbreak. The government have announced that they'll make payments to the bank to cover their fees and the whole of the first year's interest. So it basically makes the loan interest-free for 12 months. So I just want to manage people's expectations. Where that sounds great, we need to jump through a lot of hoops to make sure you're eligible for it to start with. So it's not a case of, right, I'm just going to go and get that loan. It's not as easy as that. So the other thing to really consider around this is, depending on the time frame and how urgent the funds are required, it might be worth trying to look for a normal debt facility anyway, because you're likely to get that through and get the money into your bank quicker. But again, it's something that has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. But the key things I need to get across today are the essential information that all lenders are going to need. So there's 7 bits of essential information for any sources of funding right now that without this, we're not likely to be able to begin an application. So I'll read them out as slowly as possible so people can write them down. But again, we can send them to you after, so don't worry if you don't get them all. But the key things that we're going to need to even have a chance of starting an application will be the last 12 months business bank statements, and that will have to be an element of a hard copy, so a PDF scan. It can't be something that's been exported from a bookkeeping package. They won't accept that. The last 3 years filed accounts, assuming you've been trading that long. If you haven't, then it will be as many filed accounts as you've got since you've been trading. An up-to-date set of management accounts, wherever possible. Obviously, if you've done your accounts nice and quickly, there won't be any more management accounts because that will be covered with the point above. Your age debtors, i.e. money that your customers owe you, and your age creditors, i.e. money that you owe your suppliers. So lists of those as of now. Confirmation of any outstanding debt that you've currently got, including the provider, the term, repayment. A statement of your personal assets, liabilities, and income and expenditure from all directors. Now, there isn't a set criteria of how this needs to be presented. So what we're recommending is just keep it as simple as possible. So it's a case of assets and liabilities and income and expenditure. Simple statement to start off with. If we need more, we can explain what we need for on the case-by-case basis. But I wouldn't worry too much about the detail around this to start off with. I would just get it across in really simple terms to start. And then a simple one, home addresses of all directors, shareholders, including date of births and contact details. Now, in terms of the coronavirus loan itself, there are a lot more questions and a lot more criteria. So I'll go through these as well, but as quickly as I possibly can, because there's a fair few of them. And then I just want to talk about a little bit more about how and what you're likely to receive. So the additional information for the coronavirus scheme is, firstly, what's the purpose of the requested facility? So is it for short-term cash flow? Is it for a longer-term cash flow injection? And how specifically will the funds be used to address the shortfall? They're asking sort of generic questions and they're reasonably simple to answer. A lot of businesses will be answering very similar things, but they just need to tick their boxes to enable them to move the application forward. So just do what you can when you're looking to provide this information. There's no set in stone way of presenting it or explaining it. So just explain it as genuinely as you can. And if you need support or we need more from you, we'll explain to you and we can work with you on it. It's not a major problem. So the next thing will be the details on the borrowing request. How much is being requested and why? An explanation of how this amount has been calculated. In what area of the business has the coronavirus had its impact? How will the money be used to help the business through the period of disruption? How will the borrowing support the longevity of the business? Has the basis of the calculation around the borrowing been based on existing income or future or forecasted levels? If it's based on future and forecast, what assumptions have been used within those forecasts? And is it likely that further borrowing will be needed at a later date? And then ask questions about when the pandemic's over. Once the pandemic's over, how long is it expected to take for the business to recover? What challenges are expected to be seen in, for example, the future loss of contracts, the potential loss and availability of team members? What has changed in the business, making the performance come back to the pre-virus levels? What are you going to do to change things? What plans have you put in place to get the business back on track once it starts? What the business's turnover for 2019 will be, what the business's annual wage bill for 2019 will be. Again, we'll probably be able to get that from the accounts. What the current number of employees are in the business, and we'll probably have to specify which employees have been furloughed at this point and which employees haven't. What are the running costs that the business currently has to pay? So again, a breakdown of this. And again, if you were to do a cash flow forecast, a lot of these questions would be actually answered in that. So it would kind of kill a lot of birds with one stone by preparing that. Details of any other loan and finance commitment, and has the business been able to access any previous government schemes? If so, what are the details? So if you've been eligible for a grant, if you've deferred your VAT or got any time to pay arrangements with HMRC, you'd need to state it down on there as well. So that is pretty much all the questions that are likely to be asked. So hopefully most people got that. If not, we can send that as a list separately. But again, all the lenders will have slightly different criteria. So some of them might ask all those questions, some of them might ask a selection of those questions. So as part of the work we've been doing with clients, our corporate finance team have been provided with some further information from one of the larger banks as to what they're going to be looking at. So in terms of the loan amount, the minimum loan is 25k up to a maximum of 5 million. So for anyone that's looking at funding or a buffer of around 25k or less, it's probably worth getting straight in touch with your current bank, because usually at those levels, they're quite easily able to do something, such as extending an overdraft or giving a short-term loan buffer. So the ease of time and the quickness, it would be worth just contacting your bank straight from the off about that. If you want more, then it's worth looking at the other options. The coronavirus term will range from between 1 to 6 years. As I mentioned, it will be free from interest and fees for the first year, and there'll also potentially be a capital repayment holiday of up to 6 months. So potentially you get the coronavirus loan and not have to pay anything at all on it for the first 6 months, which would be really handy. There's no early repayment fees, which is a common feature in a lot of funding. And the security will range from personal guarantees up to 100k, personal guarantees and a debenture where the funding is between 100 and 250, and potentially some tangible security if the funding's above 250k. Now, this criteria is changing all the time, so it's not set in stone, but that gives you a bit of an idea of what they're looking for. They will calculate how much you can actually borrow in respect of this loan will either be the higher of 25% of your 2019 business turnover or 2 times your wage bill for 2019. So it'll be whichever is greater of the two. And that is for the coronavirus loan. So they are the key aspects of the coronavirus loan there. So what I really wanted to get across with all of that is there are options out there. Your options are likely to be bespoke to your business, and the starting point for everything will be to get a cash flow prepared, because with that, you can then clearly see and help answer a lot of these questions that are going to be asked. Do the simple things yourself. Speak to your suppliers, your lenders, your local council regarding the grants, and HMRC regarding taxes via us. Update your cash flow to affect these different scenarios. And where the funding's needed, just make sure you're doing everything you can to get your books and records up to date and preparing all that information for the funding, because the quicker we're able to start the application, the quicker that funding will come into your bank should you be eligible. So from me, that's basically an overview of where we're up to with everything, and obviously there'll be a bit of a Q&A after, so any specific questions, I'll be here to help answer best I can.
Thanks, Joe. I think it's really important that everyone uses this time to get everything up to date as much as possible. and get the forecast done, not just for the funding, but it's a great opportunity to actually put it all together for the future. And also, you may not know that you need funding yet. And I think if you can get it all up to date and prepare, then I think that, you know, it will set you in good stead for, you know, 1, 2, 3 months time if you do need finance. Any questions, by the way, if anyone's just joined, mitch@nordens.co.uk, and I'll get them answered after for you. As Ross obviously didn't turn up, well, I think he's in the room now, but he's got no microphone. I'm not going to get him on. So I'm going to introduce Sharon, who is our head of HR. She's going to come on and explain a bit about furlough. Sharon, let me just unmute you. You should be unmuted.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So, Sharon, obviously furlough has been the word of the fortnight. Effectively, everyone is discussing furlough. So, what is furlough? Why don't you tell us what furlough actually is?
Okay, so thank you. The furlough is the job retention scheme. I'm very sorry, my dog has just started dreaming, is snoring and crying. I'm sorry if you can hear him. It's the job retention scheme. So it's to save employers making their employees redundant. It's a way of keeping them on the payroll, paying them and reclaiming the salary, or at least part of the salary. This is obviously introduced to stop mass job unemployment. So what you can do is to be able to qualify, a business has to be a UK employer and have a UK bank account. Now, anyone on the payroll from the 28th of February can qualify to be furloughed, and an employer needs to speak to their employees to see if they could put them on furlough leave. This means that the employee can receive 80% of their salary, or capped at £2,500 per month. So I've got my glasses on so I can just look at my notes if I need to. So up to £2,500 per month. And at the end of April, there's going to be an online portal where you can go online to register how many people have been made furloughed workers, the cost of that, and this can be reclaimed through HMRC. They will then send payment direct to the business's bank account sometime after April. We don't know quite when yet.
Okay, so it's effectively it's the revenue protecting, the government protecting businesses, making people redundant. So what about if you're a director of your own limited company? I think it's the question that's flooding into my inbox as we speak. Yeah. Director of your own limited company, or husband and wife, and low salary, dividends. What's the situation?
So they're sorry, you asked a lot of questions then all at one time.
Well, what's the situation if you're a director in your own?
There's been quite a few changes recently, or not changes, but clarification recently. So directors are applicable to be furloughed as well. Only their PAYE salary as of the 28th of February is included into it. So if they're on a low salary on PAYE, it will be 80% of that salary that can be furloughed and reclaimed.
Okay, and I think if I unmute, trying to unmute Joe, I don't think there's anything to say about director dividends, Joe. Am I right? It's pure if a director's got their own limited company, there's nothing in place for dividends.
Nothing's been announced yet. So, like Sharon said, it's purely the salary that the director would have been on at the 28th of Feb.
Okay, and Sharon, I'm a limited company. I've got 10 people on the payroll. How do I go about furloughing my employees?
So the employer needs to speak to the employees individually to explain the situation. And if the employee accepts being furloughed, they need to put something in writing and get an agreement to it. We have a template that we can send out to employers.
Okay, fine. And what if you're a director and you're making yourself furlough? What do you have to do then? Is there anything?
I doubt that the director is going to actually do the agreement for themselves.
Right, okay. And what if an employee rejects furlough?
If they reject furlough, then the employer can actually look at a redundancy situation.
Okay, thank you. And okay, so from I guess an accountancy point of view, we're obviously working with all you guys and many other clients. What does everyone have to make their accountant aware of?
So they need to make the accountant or the person who's running the payroll aware of who has been furloughed and from what date and what payment has been made. So although it can be 80%, an employer can pay 100% of the salary, but only receive 80% back. So they're giving their employee a top up of 20%. So they just need to tell their payroll provider who has been furloughed, from what date, and the amount they're paying.
And then as accountants, their accountants, whoever, if people aren't here, aren't clients, their accountants should do the rest when the portal opens in April. And
Yes.
the money gets rebated, the 80% up to $2,500 gets paid back as I think I read, as a backs payment into the company bank account.
That's right. And also claimed now is the minimum employer NI contribution, together with the minimum pension contribution as well.
Okay.
So those are on top of the salary.
Okay, excellent. And I think it's worth saying that it's the same thing for the self-employed. We have got a calculator for anyone who's self-employed on here who wants to work out or find out how much they should be owed from the revenue, or entitled to from the revenue. I think it's worth saying that they also say that they're going to pay back that as a backs transfer directly into your bank account in June, similar to the furlough. Thanks, Sharon. Is there anything else you want, or you think everybody should know before I go to some questions that I've had?
The only other things I'd say is this relates to all PAYE employees that were on the payroll as of 28th of February. So it doesn't matter if you were full-time, part-time, 0 hours, varied pay, they can all be furloughed and you can all get that 80% of money back.
Okay, sorry, another question to add. If you furlough someone, or if someone agrees to be furloughed, can you bring them back off furlough?
Yes, you can. That's been clarified as well. So yes, furlough can be from a minimum period of 3 weeks. So you can't furlough for less than 3 weeks, but after that, the person can come back, can perform duties, and can subsequently be furloughed again afterwards.
Okay, thank you. And
also,
I think it's
swap furlough duties around. So perhaps put someone on furlough leave for a month, 6 weeks, then perhaps somebody else, maybe somebody's been on sick leave or that person might be sick. So you can then, when they go back onto furlough leave, somebody else can come back and work during that period of time. So employees can swap around.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And in order to, as a director, so another question I'm getting asked, and I'm not in my inbox, but a question that people keep asking me is, obviously, if you're made furlough, or if you furlough yourself, the rules are you can't work. That's what they say. Different in America, but in the UK they say you are not allowed to work. And I think there's a grey area in what is work. Is business development work, which means post it on social media, or is I don't know, is doing your accounts and putting your books together. Is that work? Does that classify as work?
What we've got, so I'm just looking at my notes here. Can't see my notes on that, to be honest. I know I've got it written down there somewhere. But if they've, as long as they're not making money for the company, so what they can take while they're furloughed is they can do training for the company, and they can do some work, but that doesn't generate any income for the company. So there are activities that can be done while they're on furlough leave.
Right, understood. So if people want to put their accounts together, do their tax returns, get everything sorted for finance purposes, they can still furlough themselves. It's purely any work carried out that they're invoicing for.
Generates income.
Yeah, okay, fine. So Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Sharon. All right, great. What I will do is let me get some questions up. So, Joe, are you unmuted? Can you unmute yourself? Let me unmute you. There you go. Right. So first question. The advice for directors who are paid via PAYE differs greatly. If as a director we furlough ourselves, what exactly can we do to keep the business running, i.e. communication with clients, social media updates, keeping customers engaged? I think we just answered that. I think anything that's not, that you're not, anything that you're not raising an invoice for, as long as you're not carrying out activities that you're making income from. So I would imagine communication with customers, social media updates, and keeping customers engaged, in my opinion, and I think in Joe and Sharon, you can agree with me or disagree with me, I think that would be fine during furlough.
Yes, yeah, we were all happy with that.
Cool, there's your answer. Okay, another question. The tax payments that Joe was talking about or is talking about with regards to, I think, deferring, does that include corporation tax?
No, they haven't specifically mentioned anything about an automatic corporation tax deferral, but what I'd recommend is that as they are being legal, I'm not aware of any clients who have spoken to them about corporation tax and not what they want in terms of a deferral. So it doesn't explicitly mention corporation tax, but if that is part of your cash flow and it's a big chunk of it and you would like to spread it and it would help, then yeah, we can help speak to HMRC with you or give you guidance on that. And I'm quite confident you'll be able to get some form of time to pay or deferral there.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that, like we said before, owing the revenue money is probably the cheapest way to borrow money at the moment. I can't see them saying no to deferring any sorts of, whether it be corporation tax, VAT, or personal tax. So yeah, that's that question answered. In terms of the VAT being deferred, we have payments come out by direct debit. So do we need to cancel our direct debit for June somehow?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's that. And the clients have to cancel it themselves. The clients have asked us whether we can help them cancel. Unfortunately, we can't. The clients will have to go online and actually cancel it themselves with their bank. But yes, that's correct. Definitely, you need to do that, or otherwise HMRC will continue to take it.
Okay, good. Right, if you are director and shareholder on the payroll, can you be placed on furlough? Yes, you can. We've gone over that. Has there been any news for directors that have their own limited company and take little salary and dividends? I think at the moment, no is the answer. It's purely based on salary. Something could come out though, Joe, right? People are screaming at the chancellor to make something available.
Yeah, I mean, should there be another announcement around this and any further support, I reckon it will be in that sort of ballpark. But again, in that situation where you do have a very small salary, it would be worth exploring your options temporarily for universal credit as well, like we've mentioned, because that's another avenue where you may be able to get some further support. And just on that furlough point about generating income, the actual specific guidance on the HMRC website says you're not able to undertake work, including providing services or generating revenue. So we're of the opinion, and we've interpreted it, that basically if you're doing little bits of kind of keeping the business running from a statutory compliance point of view, such as preparing bookwork and things like that, and maybe putting a bit of things on social media, they're not directly generating revenue. You're not providing a service, so to speak, and you won't be building off the back of those tasks. So we're of the opinion that that sort of thing would be okay and it wouldn't hamper the furlough. But again, if there's any further guidance on that, we will clarify that for you as soon as we get it clarified for us, so to speak.
Great, thank you, Joe. Yeah, we are going out with stuff daily on any updates that we're getting. So if you do, if you want the updates that come from the Chancellor and the banks and everything, and everything regarding business and self-employed in simple terms, and just subscribe to our newsletter. We're really good at going out with stuff in simple terms. What happens to the furlough payment if the director has to keep working? Speaking with the banks, we've answered that. Just wanted to acknowledge that I saw the question. Okay, two questions here. First, let's start with number one. What was the amount for the loan that Joe mentioned, the hire of twice the wage bill or something else. What was the other?
Yeah, so it was twice the 2019 wage bill, or 25% of the business's turnover for 2019.
Say that again. Sorry, I missed that person.
It was 25% of the business's 2019 turnover, or 2 times the wage bill for 2019, whichever is greater.
Okay, thank you. And the other question from this person was, can you explain an example of the furlough payment, including wage, NI and pension, etc.? Is it 80% of the gross pay or net? Does the employer pay the NI tax for the full amount or just the 20% top up? Good question. Sharon or Joe?
Right. So the furlough amount is worked out on the gross amount. And your second part was to do with tax and NI? Yeah.
Can you, do the NI, the 20%, do you pay the NI for the full amount or just the 20% top up?
The company pays the tax and NI and the whole amount and gets the NI and pension contribution back on only the 80%. So only if you're topping up the 20%, then the company would pay the NI and pension contribution on that part. Or wouldn't reclaim that part back, actually, if that's clearer.
You wouldn't claim that part, but you get the NI back on the 20%.
You pay the whole lot back, but you'd only claim back 80%.
Okay, thank you. After listening to the conference, what seems to be very clear is the aid and support provided to small business owners in terms of grants and loans. But what about the single man business, the taxi driver, hairdresser, man with a van business, whose earnings are based on a day-to-day basis? What help and assistance is out there for this type of working sector?
So, I mean, again, that comes back to the bit that I mentioned about self-employed. The government have announced the grants for the self-employed people that will kick in June. There's nothing to stop self-employed people applying for funding, and there's also nothing to stop self-employed people applying for the business rate support, providing they have a premises. So, although the furlough is kind of talk at the moment, there is quite a lot of support for self-employed alongside the limited company and the employee support as well. So the support for the self-employed people are the grant that the HMRC, the government have recently announced, the option for them to use universal credit, the coronavirus business loan and other forms of funding is also available and not ring-fenced to just limited companies. Self-employed people can also explore that option. And then obviously all the incentives HMRC have put in place with deferrals and holidays on various forms of taxes that also apply. Like I mentioned as well, for those self-employed people that might have made payments on account that proved to be too high, it would definitely be worth getting your books over to us ASAP so we can assess that for you and look to reclaim some of that payment on account if it's necessary.
Okay, good. Thank you, Joe. I think it's also, I was going to mention about getting stuff, getting your tax returns done as well. And anything, I think what's happening is the revenue are being super nice at the moment. They're giving time to pay without any interest and penalties. So any accounts that are due that you would normally wait for until 3-6 months down the line, if you can get everything done ASAP, because you may be able to take advantage of the tax being paid over a longer period of time without any interest or penalties that are issued by the revenue. So I would definitely explore that right now, which may not be available in the future. And also time is available. If everyone's got time, so everyone should be, in my opinion, getting everything up to date and taking advantage of what the revenue are actually doing at the moment. I've got another question. Just came in. Just listening to the call, can you clarify what the mechanics of furlough are for 0 hours staff? By definition, they are not being paid at the moment. Can we pay them and claim back? And if so, how do we work out what to pay the workers, or do we decide that? We paid the team for some of March, but not the last 2 weeks since we have been closed.
So for the time worked in March is the time that will be claimed back from furlough perspective. Moving forward for April, you would look at April last year, or you would look, hold on, let me look at my notes. So you look at the average earnings for the same month in the previous year, or in the last year, a month, look at the average earnings, and that's what you would be claiming for 0 hours contracts.
Okay, I think what I'll do is I'll probably do I've got an email, I'll do an introduction to Sharon as well. So you can, I would imagine you've probably got more questions to follow on from that answer. So I'll do an introduction and then you can discuss it and we can help out as much as we can. But yeah, okay, well, I've got no more further questions. I think what I kind of want to finish off, like I said at the start, I think now is the most important time to get your cash flow sorted. And also, you know, as a business owner, the pause button, we've always wanted that pause button, and now it's actually come. There's a great opportunity to, you know, get everything set up properly and efficiently with regards to, you know, get everything done on the cloud with your bookkeeping. Look into R&D as well. Get in touch. We'll do something else with R&D. We're sending out stuff consistently because you may be entitled to quite a bit of cash back from the revenue. You don't even realize it. So we'll get some stuff out, but explore that option, do some research on it. And also work on your business, do your cash flow forecast, do your P&L forecasts, and, you know, set out what it is you're trying to achieve. Sorry, got one more question. What is the employer obligation regards to pensions?
It still has to be paid. It's a legal obligation.
Okay.
But the employer part of the pension, the minimum contribution of 3% can be reclaimed.
Thank you. That should answer your question. And again, once again, I do apologise. I've just seen, and someone's just sent me through an article on my phone saying that that Zoom are being hacked all over the place. So I do apologise for all the things that have come on. I didn't see too many of it, thankfully, because I put it on gallery view. But you know, I do apologise. We'll try and find a way to get this out for next Wednesday when we do another update. But yeah, for anyone who was offended, I apologise. Hopefully it won't happen again, but it was out of our control. And that's it from me. Thanks for tuning in. Anyone's got any questions, fire them over to mitch@nordens.co.uk and I will get all the relevant answers for you from whoever needs to answer them. And yes, Simon, I can see your background. Don't worry. Very good. All right, guys, I'm ending the meeting. Thanks for all tuning in.
Bye. Thank you.